All right, so here we go. One of the things that I like to use is kind of a sharpened stick here. Almost could be a sharpened pencil. And so the first thing that I like to do is kind of create reference lines. And I'm making sure that the seam of the cup that I put together is not a part of where I'm going to be pushing and pulling and all that. So currently it's directly opposite of me. If I am trying to make this a left-handed mug this time, then I know that I want to put the skull on the opposite side so that it's kind of facing the audience as the person's drinking out of it. And so I just kind of drew a line. It doesn't have to be perfect. And then we have to decide where are the eyes. So I'm drawing kind of a cross here. Reference lines again, showing me where the eyes are going to be. And then I like to kind of just give myself a basic layout of the eyes. And I don't tend to draw with straight lines. I like to try to do kind of angles and kind of create the shape of the eye, kind of breaking it up in angles. And I'm going to do the same thing. And I'm trying to give myself about an eye's distance between the two eyes. It's not quite an eye distance here, but if I took a measurement with my pencil here, and then I put that measurement, you can see that it's a little smaller than a full eye's distance. So if this is the eye here now for this skull, I am a little bit smaller than exact. Then I'm going to start to make my lines here and kind of come down. There is a slight angle here. I come down, it kind of comes in, then it starts to come back up right here. This one also likes to come back up here. So just kind of changing those lines. If you make a mistake, you can make some quick, easy erases with, and then now we know that the nose is a little bit below the eyes. Or right at where the eyes are. So I'm going to kind of make a mark here. I'm going to draw kind of a triangle here. Kind of rounded edges there. That's about where that is. Then we have kind of the top of the bridge of the gums and teeth. And then that comes out from there. So that's kind of where that is. Now I'm starting to kind of make the chin and chin line, if you will. And so I'm kind of drawing up and around. And so I've created this chin line that's going to go all the way around the skull. And I'm going to do the same thing over here, where it kind of comes up and in a little bit. And it comes back out. You can see I don't really hold my pencil like I normally do to write with. I'm trying to be a little bit looser, a little bit freer, so I'm kind of holding it at an angle, trying to kind of match the line that I made over here, and then I'm going to go back up here. So that looks pretty balanced, okay? So now one of the things that I discovered is that you want to kind of work your way bottom up when you're doing this sculpture. So I'm going to put my fingers on the inside and I'm kind of pushing out on this cheekbone. And you'll see that it's kind of splitting the clay a little bit. That's okay. I'm going to push in with my thumb here. I do have my hand on the inside of the mug, creating counter pressure. And I'm starting to push out on the opposite side of where my finger is pushing, and I'm going to start to push out here and push in here to get that to really kind of come in. And I'm doing the same thing here, and I'm just trying to get that kind of outer shape of the skull, the cheekbone, then I can come back and I can start to pinch and shape and smooth. But that's my first kind of go with that. So kind of putting my hand back down inside there, I am kind of, again, counter pressure. Here I'm doing it again, where now my hand can't quite get all the way down there, so I'm going to kind of counter pressure with my wood modeling tool, and I'm pushing in pretty hard right there to really get the mug to kind of misshapen here and really take on that shadow line that is the cheekbone and kind of what will become the jaw, not the jaw, but the upper mouth shape. Okay, so I always like to do the left side first. It tends to be a little bit trickier. So I kind of get that one done. I will come back and reshape and fix and stuff here in a little bit. Might have to change the angle altogether on that. And then if there's any kind of splits happening in the clay, I kind of come back and rub those smooth with my fingers. Okay, so now I'm going to rotate the mug here so that you can see that I'm doing the same thing on the opposite side. And I'm going to start down here, and I kind of push in, and I'm kind of counter pressuring on the inside of the mug with my inside fingers so that I can really, again, misshapen the mug without destroying it, and really pushing in along those lines that I kind of created as guidelines, if you will. And then you can really see that there's a shadow being created in this kind of ridge that's being formed that will become the cheek of the skull. Okay? And then, again, I'm going to put the wood modeling tool on the inside so that I can really push here on the side. And I have it at an angle so that I'm kind of pushing against it on the inside, and I'm pushing out to make sure that it doesn't cave in. Sometimes you have to pick it up and push it out a little bit further and really smooth and really get rid of some of those marks that you made with your fingers as you were originally doing this. Okay, so now if I hold this up, you can kind of start to see that I have the cheekbones happening on the mug, and then I'm going to really start to change the shape of this to kind of wrap around a little bit more. And then I'm going to put my hands on the inside here and kind of push in here, because the skull kind of pushes in, and that's going to become the teeth here in a little bit down there at the bottom. So I kind of pushed in and made it kind of more round. I don't like that line anymore, so I'm going to now erase that original line that I had. I'll come back and figure out center. Again, sometimes it shifts a little bit as you're actually sculpting. I kind of originally had a center line, and now it's kind of shifted over slightly. Okay, so now I want to start to really push in on the cheek right here. So I'm pushing in on the cheek right here, and I'm looking at the skeleton over there as I'm doing this, so that I can really start to make the cheekbone have the angles that it's supposed to have. I'm going to really push and sculpt here. Okay. Alter and change the angles here. And so I've kind of started to change the shape of the skull on that side. I'm going to do the same thing over here, and I'm going to just turn this slightly so I can really look at the side that I'm looking at. And I'm going to, I have my kind of middle finger right in the center where the nose would be, and I'm pushing to the side of that finger And I am slightly pushing out with my center finger. I'm going to get rid of that center line that was there. I don't need that anymore. I'm starting to kind of change the angle and shape of the cheekbone here. Kind of pushing out more, pushing in, changing the angle. Kind of looking at it, reshaping, reforming the cup. Okay, so now I kind of have the nose, and if you look at a skull, you can see that the nose kind of goes in here. There's kind of a ridge here, what is the eyebrow line. There's a kind of ridge top of the nose, and then this would be the cartilage that comes here. That when you break your nose, you break the cartilage right there. I'm trying to build this ridge out slightly so that when you look at the skull from the side, there is a bit of a nose popping out. The eyes will kind of be inset, and then we'll actually push those eyes in to create the shadows and push the nose in to create the shadow on that. So I'm going to just bring this a little bit closer so it's a little bit easier to kind of see and reference. And then I am going to start to shape the nose now. And you'll notice that a lot of times I just really use my fingers. So I'm using kind of my index finger and I'm pushing in, and I'm really starting to kind of get that triangle to reverse and go in. So I do have my left hand inside now, kind of counterbalancing what I'm doing here. Kind of building up that ridge, pushing it out a little bit. And I can always add a little bit of clay here if I need to. But I do want the shadow to kind of be a little bit more intense. I'm going to get rid of this ridge, this line that I had, kind of reshaping a little bit. But now you're starting to see that the ridge comes out, and then it kind of drops back in here at the top of the mouth. So I'm going to go back in here and make this a little bit more, a little less pronounced there, a little less pushed out, if you will. Kind of fix up some of the blemishes that were created in the process of changing the shape of the skull there. Sometimes when you're erasing some of those blemishes, pieces of clay rip off, and so you kind of have to grab those, push them, smooth them into the clay. A little bit different, but now we're starting to see the beginnings of the nose. Okay, so before I get too much more on the nose, I'm going to actually start to push the eyes in now. So again, I put my fingers on the inside. I am going to kind of be pushing on the inside of this one, and I'm using my thumb, and I'm kind of pushing in, and I'm kind of following that basic shape that I created, and I have my thumb nail right along the edge of that, and I'm allowing that to kind of really start to change and push in and become a very recessed, and I am kind of pinching it. It's almost like, so I've made, hundreds and hundreds of pinch pots in my life, just as an educator, and so I am pinching the clay between my fingers to kind of make it start to change shape and change form. And I'm really pushing in here, and I do have counter pressure on the inside, and I've really started to make the shape of that eye really start to be pronounced, and then I'm going to come back and make the kind of outside edge of that eye become more pronounced just by pinching and shaping and forming that outer ridge, and then smoothing with my finger. And I was careful this morning to cut my fingernails off because I do like to use my fingers as kind of erasers and smoothers, And if you have nails, you're constantly fighting that, so you kind of have to adjust. I know that ladies like to have long nails, but long nails and sculpture, I guess you could learn to use it, but it just doesn't work very well for me, so I get rid of them. So there's the first eye. Now I'm going to start to push out on to make that ridge that becomes the kind of eyebrow, if you will. So I'm right at the top, I'm pushing. I'm going to pinch a little bit more here and make that a little bit thinner right there, because it tends to be a little bit thinner. And then it kind of comes back in right there. And then if I make any marks with my fingers, I am careful to smooth those. So the walls are kind of thin in certain areas, so I might have to come back and patch those. I haven't yet on any of the other mugs, but, well, I take that back. I did have to patch a little bit on the inside of the nose. That tends to get a little weak and stuff. So now you can see that I'm starting to get that eyebrow ridge of the nose kind of pushing back out. Then I'm going to push back in here. So I'm pushing in while I'm at the top of it, I'm pushing out. So I'm trying to get that ridge to be a little bit more in. I'm not going to shape the eye and the eyebrow line too much more until I get this other eye created here. So I think I want to stop and just make sure that what I've filmed so far is looking pretty good before I continue. All right.